All right, Philippa, thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks for meeting with me, Michael. And we're on a Tuesday, and we're just about to go in a couple of hours into the second day of workshop for King Lear, our upcoming production later in the season, which we're so excited about. But today, we are going to talk about the House of Bernarda Alba, which is
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
playing right now.
Yes, yes.
So, so Michael, did you want to start, or should I ask you some questions that have been um, swirling around my mind?
Why don't you start?
So, one, uh, I guess one of the bigger questions I have is how did you conceive of the role of Pepe, who, of course, in the original text is a presence in all of the characters' minds, but not an actual character?
Yeah, um, yeah. Often, there's no person on stage. But part of what inspired me about the play is its tradition, both as a play, but also as a dance piece.
Yeah,
Like there's versions of this play that are just all dance.
yeah,
And what excites me about that is thinking of the play as performance, as much as just, or as much as a literature, as much as a play. And so with that idea, what I get interested in is when there's a theatrical vocabulary that offsets the rest of it. So you have these daughters sort of in a psychological realism to some extent, like they're talking, and then you have Pepe in our production as a dancer. And
yes,
he's through his dance, to me, he's sort of outside the realm of that realism. And he's still in their minds, but it gives the performance a pressure point,
yes,
that and a poetry to it too.
yeah,
But it's controversial. I mean, because it is, Che didn't write a dancer into the play. So it gets to this sort of controversial idea of um, the spirit of the text and the text itself,
yes,
and what happens when you're trying to give the spirit of the text a certain form or style, and how does that all sort of tie into itself? And I think people had different reactions to the dancer because it's sort of ongoing around the plexi the whole time. But for me, I loved it, and I thought it was fairly successful, partly because, the space is so large that there's moments you see him and there's moments you don't. And when you see him, or at least for me, I'm actually reminded that there's a barrier between him and the daughters and the women in the plexi, and it brings the plexi sort of foremost to my mind. And that's part of what excited me about the plexi, is that even though the set doesn't change, your perception of the set can change throughout the show. Like you see it
exactly.
one moment, and then you forget it's there the next, and then you realize it's there again, and there's a constant sort of alienation that's a part of that, by not being able to feel the presence or the energy of the women inside the plexi. So Pepe actually serves as a sort of kind of a haunting around them, and also a sort of flickering and reminder to us that we're on the outside looking in the entire time.
Yes. And so, Michael, would you say that there is an element? How would you say? I'm going to throw out the word magic realism.
Hmm.
And how could that, how would that, uh, how would a cognizance of that assist our audience watching the play?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I guess what I would say is that, when I think of magical realism, often I think these terms are literary. So I think of Gabriel Garcia Marquez and A Hundred Years of Solitude, and sort of, I don't know, having butterflies, swarm through. And I mean, there's a sort of leaps of logic that can happen that way. And I guess what I would say in terms of watching it, and I didn't think of magical realism, but what I do think of is visual poetry. And there being as many layers of imagery as you can possibly get that the play can hold. And so that when you're watching it, it's a performance piece as well. And you're watching sort of how to read all the different signs, all the different symbols, and that there's a density of layers to it. And in that way, you have one layer that's sort of elevated and poetic, like and maybe magical, like the dance. And then you have another one that is much more grounded and brutal, like Bernarda abusing her daughters, and you're sort of seeing them up next to each other as layers, you know. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but it is trying to reach for something that is beyond just the logic of the play itself, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. And just for our viewers, I'd love to suggest that when we engage with each other, whether by watching each other, whether by actually interacting, imagine the number of elements of that interaction that do not involve simply words. And so we're constantly interacting with each other in terms of our gestures, our movement, and I mean, that sounds very basic the way I'm putting it, but I feel that this production does uplift or seek that kind of transcendence that is actually a part of every human interaction. Not that you transcend words simply by having movement, but when you think of the script, it's a dark script. It's this woman who is so thoroughly inculcated by the influence of her father and of her husband, both deceased. She is the living embodiment of their authority. And she has so far repressed any sense of uh, her own femininity, whatever that means, that she insists upon repressing everything in her daughters for the next 7 years in order to honor her vision of what it means to lose those men, particularly her husband. And so she's seeking to repress everything that makes them vital. And I feel that that's what you were really um, uplifting in this movement that is so restricted by the plexiglass. Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
burbling. Um,
No, Philippa, yeah, it's funny. I mean, I feel sometimes caught because I value the sort of um, abstract gestures and movement, but sometimes I worry I can lose an audience. Just because it's sort of like, what is that?
yeah,
Like why? And I guess kind of to your point, I mean, where I think I get most inspired about theater is when the production triggers something in my imagination. So I actually I'm seeing double. I'm seeing what's there and what's not there at the same time. And the art of it to me is trying to get as non-literal but as communicative as you can possibly get. You know? So if it's literal, all of a sudden it reduces the double vision because you're seeing what it is. It's telling you this is that. And abstract movement helps me, at least when I'm watching it, feel like, oh, I feel what's happening for them, but I'm also not seeing exactly what it is. And so it becomes a signifier. It becomes another way of metaphorical language. And in the dance part of it, to your point about body language and so forth, it's it's a style, and it's also it's living in the realm of metaphor and of sort of objectual language. Like
yeah,
the daughters at one moment are sort of um, archetypes and a collective, and then another moment are the psychological reality of the daughter to the mother. Um, and yeah, I mean, in terms of trying to, I mean, the other side of it, like something I thought a lot about is I think there's like another version of this play where there's a lot more breath in it. And somehow, and maybe it was the decision to put it behind the plexi. I mean, I'm not sure. But somehow when in the rehearsal room, whenever we let that breath in, it just didn't quite work. Like it would sort of go, it sort of had nowhere to go. And so what it felt like the play actually was to me is this long rupture, like this long trying to burst out of the prison. And Bernarda continuing to try and like suppress and repress, and the bubbling up and the bubbling up and the rebellion and the rebellion and the suppression. And that's a different energy than ebbs and flows, and watching it, I felt that. I mean, I felt like, oh, there's another version of this that has a little bit more breath, that's a little easier to watch. On the other hand, I also found the inability to offer breath to the audience congruent with the spirit of the play, which is that the daughters have no room to breathe, that
Ever. Yeah.
ever, ever.
And it's interesting, Michael, just thinking of the play we're in rehearsal for right now, Lear, because I see Lear, his singular greatest achievement is what the philosopher Karen Armstrong has said is to even momentarily dethrone the self from the center of the universe. And to me, the darkness of the House of Bernarda Alba is that Bernarda never even considers that to be a cliff that she could even peer over.
Yeah.
She constantly pulls herself back into the safety of her received ideals, which she has made concrete, literally behind the
Yeah.
plexiglass, and she pulls her daughters back into that. So much so that something happens at the end of this play, and people who haven't seen it, please go rush this weekend. Something happens at the very end of the play that makes any forward movement impossible.
Yeah. It's funny about that, the dethroning of the self, because also I find that just the longer I run this theater company and even directing, it can sometimes look, I'm sure, from the outside like this person's at the center of it all. But actually, to do it, I feel like when I'm doing it at my best, I'm very much decentering. And the more center you are, the more you have to decenter yourself. Otherwise, it won't work. People won't work together. It won't kind of cohere. And with Bernarda Alba, it was such an undertaking that everyone, yeah, I mean it's worth noting it's at Omni Commons, which is this like beautiful venue, and we had to do a huge lift to get the theater in there. And so the team, like Ashley Monday and everyone who kind of put that together, was really the heart of it all. But yeah, I mean, I think that both King Lear and Bernarda Alba, there's a sort of tragedy of of a blind spot, but also because they had been in charge and at the center of it, they can't fully. I mean, King Lear sort of has that moment, but they can't fully step out of it and offer breath, offer freedom to, like Bernarda can't offer freedom. She can't. I think the tragedy is that she also is trying to protect her daughters. And so it becomes in trying to protect them, she actually sort of suffocates them. And then
Yeah.
there's a rebellion, there's a rupture that sort of comes out of that at the
Because
end.
you will not allow them a voice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it protects them as you would protect your dog.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Michael, there was something that just was swirling around my head. Oh, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Lorca, the playwright?
Yeah. I mean, Lorca, I mean, I don't know as much as maybe I would like, but he was sort of the premier playwright in Spain in 1936, and he was writing right before the Spanish Civil War. He wrote Bernarda Alba 2 months before the Spanish Civil War broke out, and then once it broke out, right afterward, he was assassinated. and there's a lot of legends about his body never being found and so forth. Um, but he was a socialist, and he was I mean, in many ways, I think Bernarda Alba is an allegory for Franco's Spain, and in many ways, it's a protest play, I think. I mean, what's funny is I reading it and watching it and working on it. I think that in some respects we want there to be a catharsis at the end of the play, but I that didn't seem there to me. It felt more like Bernarda doesn't let her daughters be full people, and so they're not Tennessee Williams created psychological with nuance and so forth. They live between the archetype and the person, and it felt more like watching a car crash or watching something. And in general, I mean, I think what Lorca captured was the sense of awe that can happen in a tragedy in a horrific way, like almost like a horror. Um, but maybe not the catharsis sort of at the end, you know. I think there is some in watching Bernarda come undone, but there is this. He in the play talks about like realism. He wants it to be sort of photographic realism, and I think he very much wanted like a peering in to a world that was at that time not allowed to be expressed, of the women in Spain. So it somehow has a to me the play has like an astonishment, which is a little bit different than catharsis or even emotional connection, to the people. And that's a lot of where the plexiglass came from, is actually sort of acknowledging that like we're peering in and we're gonna be separated from them. We actually never quite get to feel with them or fully connect. That somehow that's a part of the spirit of the play.
Yes. And just thinking about the magnificent Lisa Ramirez, co-artistic director of Oakland Theatre Project, did you choose the play with Lisa's remarkable talents in mind?
Oh my God, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I just felt like this was a role Lisa should play in her life, and it felt like the perfect fit. Um, yeah, I mean, and with plays like that, like Lear, or you need an actor where you're like, oh yeah, I can build it around this person.
Yeah.
Um,
You need an actor who ignites the fire inside you,
oh
the
yeah,
fire
yeah,
of possibility.
yeah.
Michael, when I think about this, I was so thrilled when you invited me to be resident dramaturg for the Oakland Theatre Project, because what I feel is that the Oakland Theatre Project, it's not just that it's growing in size as as a theatre, it's that it's growing in scope for places in the mind and the heart where it can take us. And I'm wondering whether that's when you think of our audiences, and by the way, everybody, Michael and I are just making this up as we go. We're not, but I just wonder um, what your vision is for, because I think of Shakespeare's company, they were basically at times performing six different plays in a week.
Oh my
And you might
God.
think, how did everybody remember those lines? But they were just ignited by his vision. They sometimes got their lines wrong. I mean, who can keep all those lines in place? But so when I think of this company and where we want to not lead our audiences, where we want to go with them, um, is that, how does that relate to your vision? I'm being a little bit hyperbolic in sort of, okay, this is where Shakespeare was, where are we? But again, Shakespeare was of the people, and he was staging pieces that inspired his audience to put up a different lens, even for a moment, to be able to view the restrictions, the possible permissions within a society that was full of public executions for things that people did and we haven't got to that point in America yet. But I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
your vision for the company has something to do with the expansion of our vision of the spirit or the zeitgeist of where we are now.
Well, Philip, I think you said it better than I could ever say it. And being compared to Shakespeare is but yeah, I would say, I mean, one of the things I think about often is that I I would like audiences to come see an OTP show and know before they walk in and feel after they leave that they will never see something quite like this elsewhere. And whether they liked it or didn't like it, that there is a sharp there's something unique and there's something that can only happen in that space at this time with these people. And so it requires a certain presence. Like we have to be all of us, the actors, the performance, the audience, like we're all present to an aesthetic event
Yeah,
that can maybe sometimes sort of expand the way in which we see the world. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's why I go to the theater and make theater is I I want to have an experience that I can't quite name. I want it to actually surpass words. And that's a I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I remember seeing the documentary Pina about Pina Bausch, and it was right before I did my graduate school interview to get into grad school. And I couldn't tell you why I loved it. I couldn't tell you what it stirred up in me, but I was just arrested and I felt somehow enlarged. I
yeah,
felt somehow like this poetic movement, which is, I mean, Pina Bausch is a choreographer, and her work, Tanz theater, is sort of between theater and dance, but it somehow was beyond it was beyond me, and I felt larger because of it.
yeah,
And it also just some of it's disturbing, some of it's shocking, some of it's funny, but I couldn't name. I had an experience that was beyond my vocabulary. It wasn't sentimental. It wasn't just pretty. It was. I mean, something I think a lot about is that beauty is just before terror.
yeah,
Um, I guess, Philippa, to your question, I mean, I think that a theater should be responding to the time, but
yeah,
not just politically, but in form. And something I've realized recently, I think we live in an era of resentment. I think David Brooks was talking about this, and that often what follows resentment is an era of romanticism. And in a resentment world, everyone sort of discards the high ideals, beauty, truth, love, honesty, valor, honor. No one believes in them anymore. They've all been proven to be false and sort of foolish. And romanticism actually says, no, you can reach for them. And I feel that. I mean, I like to think if we were in a romantic era, I would be a little bit more in a comedic kind of thing to challenge it. But right now, I feel like we need to believe in big, beautiful, we need to expand our view of the world. And there needs to be things out there that inspire that, even when it's uncomfortable and beauty right before is beauty being sort of the last step before terror is it makes beauty dangerous. And
yeah,
that's a romantic ideal to me. And that's a little bit different than it being pretty or palatable.
yeah,
And I don't know if this production reaches that or not. I mean, I think for some people it did, some people it really didn't. Um, but that is what I'm reaching for,
yeah,
as a total performance, as a theatrical event. And I find that I'm reaching for that sort of in in a lot of the work that I'm doing. And so in that way, when an audience comes and what OTP is trying to offer at the moment, it's trying to offer a vision for what comes after this time. How do we rebelieve in different kinds of higher values?
Yeah.
I need that in my life. I need to find that in my life. And so I hope that's what it's offering for some other people.
And Michael, I'm just when you were talking about romantic vision, I was thinking about that beautiful Keats line, truth is beauty, and beauty is truth. That is all ye know, and all ye need to know. And I think people often forget or don't really see the word know there,
Yeah.
because knowing something is not just comprehending it, it's apprehending the effect of it. And so when you were talking about, the idea of beauty, coming the moment before terror, and I was thinking about a little trembling marigold flower, say, nobody notices them very much, but it's trembling out there. And you might get a storm that suddenly erases it. And this might sound very hyperbolic, but I'm just thinking for me, that's what a really moving and worthwhile artistic experience does. It makes me almost feel like I'm with that flower, trembling
Yeah.
before the moment of desecration,
Yeah.
where
I
I'm
agree.
apprehending some emotion that I can't put into words. Or
Yeah.
I might put into words every night because I'm an insomniac, I'll wake up thinking about things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in some ways it's the moment right before it's unbearable.
Yes.
And sometimes like sometimes you miss and sometimes it just becomes unbearable. I mean, you overstep or you go too
Yeah.
far and people have different thresholds for different
Yeah.
things there, but yeah, that is the delicate it's sort of it I think it's exactly that, and it's right before, it's sort of sometimes right before the end. It's a
And
bloom right before death.
yes. And Michael, I've been wondering whether I know we're all doing 100 things trying to make things work, but I have wondered whether we might want to set up some kind of blog site where people could come away before they go to bed, just um just writing 2 or 3 sentences about why it worked, why it didn't work,
Yeah.
um, what they're thinking as
Yeah.
they dissolve away from that performance.
I love that. I mean, there's also Maxi, our grant writer, who's also a director, was saying, I'm blanking on but there's an app now for people to write their own reviews about film,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping to get it for theater. But that just goes to say, I mean, anyone listening to this, I think should subscribe to the SF Chronicle, Mercury News. You should read all the reviews.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy. I mean, I think it's great, and I want there to be. I sometimes wish there was more culture around the criticism, like in the sports industry. Most of the industry is not the game. It's everyone talking about the game. And sometimes in theater, I think it can be a wonderful edification to grapple with contradictory reviews and whatever it is that the artist says, and then come and get to think for yourself about what you see. And
Yeah.
so having people get to write their own, I think would be great.
Yes.
And I think it allows for an engagement that is beyond just whether or not I liked it or didn't like it,
Mhm.
and starts to contend with sort of what was the proposal and did it meet its goal?
Yeah. And
Um,
how did I feel about being basically excluded from the same air as the
yeah,
actors were breathing by the plexiglass? How did it make me feel? Did it enhance my experience? Did it
yeah,
detract from it?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, a big gesture in the production is alienation.
Mm.
They're mic'd, the actors are mic'd, which has been a technical challenge for us. But even when it succeeds, that like hearing an actor through a speaker and behind a plexiglass wall, to me, it's just sort of like you're not able to connect with them.
Mm.
It becomes a kind of voyeurism or spying or something like there is an element there that is removed, and that has a different effect, uh, and that you can go on about that, but that is a different thing, and some people might appreciate it, some people might feel like, I just don't need that in my life, or alienated enough, etc. So.
Mm. And could I just get a little heads up for our audience of the next show?
Yeah, so the next show is The Fray by Taylor Mack. And if you saw House of Bernarda Alba, it will be complete whiplash. The Fray is wacky and funny and a comet, like a just sort of unashamedly as comedic and silly as you can possibly get. It's basically, I would say, in some ways about class and about red and blue America. And Taylor actually, in some ways, I think, wrote it about Taylor's own life, coming from Stockton and returning back to it in a way. So, but it's heartfelt and a romp. Uh, and it's going to be at our. So I should share that. This year, we thought we were going to take over the Flax building, like the whole building. And so we thought we were going to have two theaters, one in the store area, one in our loading dock. And so Bernarda Alba was scheduled to be in the big space. King Lear was scheduled to be in the big space. And that didn't happen. And so then we scrambled and found off-site venues. So the Fray will be back at Flax in our usual loading dock. Orpheus Descending will be in the loading dock. And then King Lear will be at Z Space in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, wonderful. Well, Michael, I don't know about you, but I have to go and prep for our second day of the workshop of the year. And if anybody's got questions about tidbits that they can get, we will be having a series um, of sessions that I will be leading uh, as we move into rehearsal. And so that will be Michael and I've talked about this a while ago, that we wanted people to feel uh, that your thoughts, your questions, your expectations could actually be stimulated by these sessions that will open Lear up to all kinds of philosophies, to psychological entryways to the play. So we really hope that you might join us for that, as well as for the production, which will feature not just the play, but actually music composed for the show by Paul Drescher. We've got the amazing Rindy Eckert and Dean Leonard coming from New York. It's going to be a big couple of months.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and haven't seen Bernardo Alba, please check it out and let us know what you think. And if you did see it, let us know what you think.
Yes, we love to get feedback, even if it's at times got a bit of a sting to it.
Yeah,
It,
send those to Philippa.
yeah. Actually, I should get an Oakland Theatre Project email address, shouldn't I?
Yeah, for all of those emails, absolutely.
Yes. So
Yeah,
we'll send that out later
yeah,
today.
sounds great.
Thanks
All
for
right.
joining us, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Philippa.
Thank you, Michael. See you later today.
See you later today.
Bye.
Bye.